1320 Kings Insider. James Ham is here, rocking that Kings Beat merch. James, were you able to step away from basketball for a couple of days?
I mean, I wrote all weekend, but I was able to step away. I didn't watch any of the All-Star Game festivities.
Woo, missed out.
Yeah. Like once you've gone a couple of times. Yeah, once you've gone a couple of times, I really don't think that like the allure of it is gone. I think it's something like I would have liked to have taken my son to when he was younger. Even now, he would still appreciate it. My 18-year-old, he would still appreciate it. But like to watch it on TV, I just you've seen how the sausage is made, so yeah, so it's a little different, but.
There's a lot of truth to that. Like once it's one of those things. Like I've been to that. I've been to the Grammys. Like I've been to some cool award shows. It's very cool to have on your resume. You don't need to go twice.
Yeah.
You really don't need to do it a second time.
Yeah. Years ago, I was in Siena, Italy, and went to the Palio, which is a bareback horse race around the city square. And they bring in the same dirt every year for like centuries. And they cover the city square in this dirt, and then they scrape it all up. And then there's contradas, like little villages within the city that they all bid on the best riders, and it's random which horse you get. Anyway, it's like a major cultural thing, like in Siena, and it's kind of like running with the bulls. Like once you do it, I was at the finish line. Horse won. I think he'd thrown his rider, so it was just the horse that came around. And then all these crazy Italian people jump the fence and run out in front of the horses that are all flying through at like breakneck speed. And I'm watching this thing unfold, and just like people are crying, and like it's this emotional thing. It's like, yep, I did it. I'm not doing this again. So it's one of those things where you're like, okay, yeah, that was really cool. I'm good.
Yeah,
different cultures.
Yeah, I don't know if I need that one time. I don't know if I need that one time.
Good. That and the running with the bulls, you're good.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I haven't done running with the bulls, but I mean,
would you?
I probably. Well, there was a time where I was fast, but like now, it's like I could just see myself like
bad back. James Ham is not running with the bulls.
No. If I got hit by a bull, like it's all over. Like
if I got hit by a bull, it's all over. I don't even have a back injury. It's all over anybody. I don't want no problem with them dudes.
But I think you could probably run away. I don't think I could run away at this point. Maybe I could. I mean, like adrenaline pumping, like you deal with it later. Like the back injury would hit like 20 minutes later when the adrenaline was gone, and you're like, oh no, that doesn't feel good. But at least I can say I ran with the bulls.
Now at that point, you're just wishing you were dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Back injury, it would have just been better to let one of them things spear me, because this is awful.
Yeah, I like to travel. Like my wife and I, we've traveled a lot together, and like again, like the All-Star Game is once you go, like, do I need to go again? Like I'm going to the Final Four this year. In New Orleans, and New Orleans, I'm going. I love New Orleans. I've been to New Orleans, I think 3 times now. It's an amazing city. It's a lot of fun. It's not somewhere I would keep going back to all the time, but for a getaway, that's fun. But to go to the Final Four, we had some friends who won the lottery, and so I'm going as a fan. I'm not even going. Like I can do a hit from there, and I'm going to write it off.
So to clarify, they won the lottery, like a ticket lottery or like a lottery? Oh, okay.
No. So the
because I had some business proposals I wanted to present to your friend. A different lottery.
Yeah. No, like when you're for the Final Four and for like the Super Bowl, they have lotteries that you're in, and you can be in it for years and not win. And I think they were in the Final Four lottery for like 5 or 6 years, and they finally hit it. And so, it should be fun. I'm excited to go. I've been to like the tournament a couple of times in Sacramento, both at Arco and at Golden One. But I haven't been to like the event, the Saturday night, the 2 games on Saturday and then the game on Monday. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to check that out one time. I kind of hate that they're in the domes now, for those games. I think you can get the energy, in a building or an arena a little better than the domes, but it's still something on the bucket list. Yeah, I got to check out the Final Four.
Yeah, I would like to go to the Super Bowl too. Like I've been to plenty of like playoff games in baseball and plenty of basketball playoffs. I mean, like I'm lucky enough I've been in two winning locker rooms in the NBA for in the NBA finals. Like I up above me hiding, I have corks from the locker room. I think we've talked about that, but yeah, like being in a winning locker room during something like that is crazy. And that's just, that's part of the job. You get to do stuff like that. But I haven't been to a Super Bowl, and I haven't, like there are a few more things on my bucket list. I'd like to go to every baseball stadium.
Speaking of winning locker rooms, with 22 games left in the season, how much winning will the Sacramento Kings do down the stretch? That's something we've talked a lot about today, and we'll probably talk a lot about tomorrow as well. What do you think their approach is the final 22 games of the season?
I think they're going for it. Like I don't know if they can get there. Like I broke it down for my Sunday musings. Just the path there is pretty difficult, but like why not? Like we talked to Fox today, we talked to Sabonis last night. Like their intention is like let's build some chemistry. Let's get this thing rolling so we're ready for next year. But in the back of their mind, everyone is looking at it going, Jusuf Nurkic just went out for a month at least with plantar fasciitis. Like clearly, Portland wants no part of that 10th seed, and they're the leader in the clubhouse right now. And then you're looking at teams like maybe New Orleans wants to fight for it, but they're not that far ahead of you. And the Spurs are always competitive, but again, they would prefer to have a draft pick. It's just an interesting way that this season's going to play out, because even if you somehow make it into the 10th seed, I actually think you got a shot, like, because the two teams that are going to be, that are right now the 8 and the 9 are the Clippers and the Lakers. And like neither one of those teams fully scare me right now. So like, I think, why not? Really? Because even if you do make it to the 10th seed, and you don't go further than that, then your standings are locked after 82 games. So you can still be like the number 8 pick going into the lottery and make the 10th seed, which is kind of strange. But there are a lot of better teams in the Eastern Conference this year that this switchovers happen. So yeah, like I kind of get this vibe. Like they're strangely confident. Not that they're going to go get it, but they're strangely confident that that they can at least, that they are building for something, and that the vibe is different and the basketball intelligence is different. And I think they're excited. I think guys like Fox and Sabonis are excited about what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they are going to go for it. I think that I think they got a shot. We did a poll the other day about what are the chances that they make the play in, and it's not a, in my opinion, it's not a huge shot, a very high percentage, but I got them at around 25%. I know Damian said maybe 35%, but I think they could do it. I look at, we project wins and games all the time. I don't necessarily want to do that, but I think that the way this team has shown that they can play in the 4 games, are they a player away from being like a true playoff team? Absolutely. But being able to play good down the stretch and play some 500 ball or close to it, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for this group. And I think they probably, feel the same way after listening to you talk about what the vibe was at practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing is they're heading into the stretch run mostly healthy. Terrence Davis is, of course, out for the season. But like Jeremy Lamb's back at practice and Davion Mitchell's back at practice. Like this is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to grow and to learn and to be in competition late in the season, which the Kings haven't been for a long time. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that, because they have actually made a run the last couple of years and just come up short. But I also, like, when you really break down the numbers, they have, I think it's the 6th most difficult schedule left in the league. And New Orleans has the 5th most difficult. So those are your 2 teams that you should really be looking at. And I think the win percentage against is like 509 and 507 or something like that. And then San Antonio's like 507 against, or 503 against. And so they're down at number 15. But then the Trailblazers have the 28th easiest schedule. Like it's flat out easy. Yeah. So if they want to make it, they've got a really, really good shot, but they don't. I mean, it's clear they don't. And so, and it really could hurt them if they do, because they have not only their own pick, but they also have New Orleans pick in this year's draft. So New Orleans pick is, I think it's top 4 protected and 15 through 30 protected. So if it goes anywhere from 5 to 14, it's their pick. And so really interesting that like they have an opportunity here to load up and be pretty solid like next year, but the worse they are, the better it is for them.
That's interesting. There's a lot more we want to talk about, James, including Davion Mitchell's return to practice. What you think his role will be moving forward. We want to talk a little bit about, we've talked a lot about the coaching staff today and Alvin Gentry. We'll dive into all of those things with our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham, with us here on D-Lo and KC, brought to you by McQueen and the Violet Fog, the smoothest gin in the world, handcrafted in Brazil, on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. All right, guys, I need a minute. Go ahead. Talk amongst yourselves.
You know what's interesting, James, is like I think this is a super long shot. I don't think this happens. But the Lakers, if you look at their remaining schedule, it's pretty tough because they have you're probably familiar with this, the NBA, obviously they start to ramp up with Sunday games, Saturday primetime games after football season is over. And obviously the Lakers are one of the, top flight franchises. So they kind of front load the Lakers schedule at the beginning part of the season so you can save the, Lakers versus Warriors or Lakers versus Maverick. Like their March is kind of tough. And that team is not good. Anthony Davis is down. Is there a world where they fall out?
Yeah. I'm literally, while you asked me that, I swear I did the math on this the other day, and New Orleans has the 8th at 510, most difficult. The Kings are at 9th at 509. The Lakers have the 3rd most difficult schedule at 538. They still have 2 games against the Suns, 2 games against the Warriors, a game against Utah and Philadelphia. They have a game against the Cavs. They got 2 against the Mavs. They do have some easy ones, but even their easy ones, I'm not sure that their easy ones are as easy because they only have 1 against Houston, 1 against OKC, 1 against the Spurs, but 3 against New Orleans, and New Orleans isn't given in yet.
Right.
And you got 2 against Washington, which is a hot mess, but 2 against the Clippers.
Yeah, they play Philly. They play Cleveland.
Yeah. So, and then you go down to Portland. Portland has a 29th. They're at 456. And, they do have a lot of teams that are cashing it in. And I think the Kings do too.
Antonio, 2 against Houston. I think they got Portland, but they, like you said, they don't want it. They want no parts of this 10 spot.
Yeah, so the Kings still have, they've got 1 against Orlando, 2 against Houston, 1 against OKC, 1 against the Pacers, 1 against the Spurs, 2 against New Orleans. They also have 2 against the Suns, but again, the Suns are going to play without Chris Paul.
Right, and one of the last Suns game is the last game of the season, so
yeah,
nobody's.
That's a gimme.
Suns.
Yeah, that's a toss-up. And I think they have a game against Golden State late, too, don't they?
I think it's the one before the last home game of the season, I think is.
Yeah, and I think that might be the game that I miss to go to the Final Four. But the Kings still have the Heat, the Bulls, 1 more game against the Jazz, and 1 more against the Bucks. I had them winning, like when I went through and looked, I think they can get 10, maybe 12.
Sounds crazy, Dan. I did this same practice with 25 games left. I had them at 14 and 11.
Okay.
Yeah. They've already lost 1 of the games I thought they could win, though. The Brooklyn.
Oh, the Brooklyn game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a couple of stinkers, but I also think that they're going to shock a couple of teams. It really, to me, like you almost have to split these games with Denver, like in order to give yourself any chance. Because if not, you're at least you're not making you're adding to your loss total, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're looking at now. We're looking at your loss total and the standings right now. That's where the Lakers kind of have a leg up on teams like the Kings, while they're up on the Kings with 22 games left. It's really tough to make up 7 games in the loss column.
Right.
And so right now the Kings are 4 games behind the Trailblazers in the loss column, but they're only 2 games behind the Spurs and the Pelicans, and they play both of those teams. So yeah, I think it should be fun to watch. To be honest with you, like there's no reason why the Kings can't at least make this interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like and while
hang on, James. Sorry,
yep.
We're coming back. Live on the Odyssey app, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Facebook Live as well. You can check us out across those platforms. Hit the thumbs up as we welcome in 1320 Kings insider James Ham, James Kinney, having a discussion over the commercial break about the upcoming schedule and how achievable the 10th spot might be. And based on what you just said a few minutes ago, James, about the Portland Trailblazers, some of these other teams, it feels like it really just boils down to, in terms of teams that want it, it's probably the Pelicans and the Kings.
Yeah, that's what I would look at. I would think it's the Pelicans and the Kings. I mean, the Pelicans made the CJ McCollum move specifically to try to go for it, but I think it was with the hopes that Zion would play. And now I think we're in a weird position there where they could be distracted the whole way down the stretch here. And that's, I mean, for the Kings, that's a good thing. And look, the Spurs are never going to cash it in. That's just not who they are. So even though they don't have a bunch of talent, they did make some moves at the deadline to take away talent to get worse. So yeah, I'm kind of in the mode where, like, give me like 8 games here, 10 games, and I think we'll know if this team's got a shot. They really have to start playing like really good basketball. And Alvin talked about it. Like, even though they lost to the Bulls, he's like, we played some really good basketball. We just lost to a team that's red hot and a player that's red hot, and we lost by 7 points. So yeah, I kind of dig like just the overall vibe where I don't think that they have a bunch of pressure on them, but they also know that like they have an opportunity to really kind of start building for next season. And we'll go back to the Suns in the bubble, who went 8-0 in the bubble, and they were so bad the previous like 66 games that they went 8-0 in the bubble and still didn't make the play-in. So that tells you how bad they had no business being there at all in the bubble. But look what happens the next year. They go wild, right? The next year. And that's what I think, if you're the Kings, you're looking at. You're like, okay, how do we get this thing going in a way that even if we lose some tough ones down the stretch, we at least know that we're building something, and we're at least getting chemistry with major pieces that are going to be here going forward. Like, and I think we're paring down who's going to be here pretty quickly. It's a pretty small list that's going to be in Sacramento after this season. But still, like, guys like Mo Harkless should still be on the roster next season. And, if you're looking at your basic core, it's now totally different. And so they got to get it right. They got to start building something and start figuring something out right now. And so they are going in with some momentum, even if it's a different coach, even if it's different everything. They need to start building something, because again, like Fox and Sabonis and probably Harrison Barnes, Davion Mitchell, Dante DiVincenzo, like those guys are going to be here next season, and they need to start building what should be some interesting chemistry.
Can I mention something real quick, KC? Because if I don't mention it, I never will. And I've teased like 3 times that there's a war brewing in Southern California. Apparently, according to The Athletic, Rob Pelinka and LeBron James have taken the first steps to declare war against one another, which I bring that up because, one, it was supposed to be a longer topic of conversation today, but Kenny and I got to talking about ourselves for an hour, and the Kings getting into a play-in matchup against the Lakers doesn't necessarily scare me. Especially when you're at that stage of the season where LeBron's like, this is stupid. This is dumb. Get me out. Where am I going to play next? Like, get me out of here. This is terrible.
Yeah.
And who knows if Frank Vogel is still employed at that point? Like, it's just all sorts of stuff that, like, if the Kings got there, it's not insane to think, yeah, they won a couple of games against the Lakers.
Or if they win a game against the Lakers, they're going to win a game against the Clippers that, who knows what they're going to look like by that point too. Then all of a sudden you're the 8th seed. And then, again, all bets are off. What if Chris Paul isn't the same? Well, you don't even know who the number 1 seed's going to be at this point because of Chris Paul's injury.
It's still Phoenix. It's too many games. It's like 6.5 games. Like, they're not that bad that they're going to lose Chris Paul and then just, I mean, that's epic. Like that's an epic collapse over 20. I think for them it was 24 games.
Have you seen that? Like, Memphis is storming. Memphis is like a game and a half behind.
They're coming for Golden State. Yeah,
that's absolutely crazy.
Nobody can beat the Blazers, not even Memphis.
Yeah, it's just totally bizarre. But the Blazers thing is totally bizarre. Yeah. So, but you get a bunch of tryhards. This is what happens, right?
Yeah. To that Lakers point, Damien, we talked about it during the break, myself and James. I mean, I'm not putting any money on this. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but there's this weird, not really weird, but the NBA really starts to ramp up their national broadcast and their Saturday night and Sunday games after football season is over. Well, one of the bigger franchises, if not the biggest franchise in the league, is the Lakers. So what they do is the Lakers, I don't want to say they have a cake schedule during football season, but once football season's over, your end of February's or March's, that's when they ramp up. Oh, Lakers versus Luka or Lakers versus Warriors, or that March is crazy for the Lakers, and they're not good.
No,
they're not.
They're not good. Like, their schedule is not good to finish the season out, and I don't know what might happen there.
Yeah, the Lakers have a .538 win percentage against. Like, they have the 3rd most difficult schedule in the league behind the Bucks and the Bulls. So, and you're right. It's the Bucks, the Bulls, the Lakers, the Knicks, the Jazz. Those are the most difficult. Minnesota, Golden State. Those are your top 7 most difficult schedules. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
Kings might not be playing the Lakers in the play-in at all.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this too, like,
they might not be playing them at all. They might knock them out.
2 or 3 weeks ago, like, it was like
that would be better than advancing to the playoffs. If you knock the Lakers out of play-in contention, that would be better than getting to the playoffs.
I agree. But again, like 2 weeks ago, like, all we could hear was like that annoying backup sound, that when a truck is in reverse, like beep beep. That's what it felt like. If the Kings made the play-in, it was some epic back end that no one else wanted it, and you want it because you haven't been there forever. And that's just not the feeling I get anymore. Like, you now have changed the franchise completely. We get a fresh start. We get a fresh start with longer defenders and a centerpiece and Sabonis and smarter players all over the court. Like, is this team, does it have holes? Oh, of course it has holes. But I think you can get through, especially if, like, say, what if Rashawn Holmes becomes really good down the stretch and you're able to steal a few minutes at the power forward spot with him and Sabonis, and those guys play together a little bit, but even like the 15 to 18 minutes he's going to get, he's really good. What if DiVincenzo during the break has really worked on his 3-point shot and he's got his legs underneath him with a little bit of extra time off, and all of a sudden he's coming out firing? What if De'Aaron Fox averages, I think he'll probably average between like 26 and 30 between here and the end of the season. I mean, he's averaging 28 over his last 5.
I know, but man, can you imagine if Fox put up 30 to end the season, 30 at night for the last 22? Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, that's where he's set up to go. And if you get a couple of play sets with these guys, that utilize the skill set right, I think you really can start building something. Like today at practice, they're really working on Sabonis in the post. Man, he was beating down my dude Doug. They had Doug playing defense on him in the post, and Sabonis slamming into him. You see Doug over there like moving his shoulder around, like, oh my goodness,
Get
like,
that seaweed bath ready.
Yeah, I just got hit by
seaweed bath ready.
the salts. Get the salts and the seaweed. Yeah. So look, I think that this team, like, they have a good spirit about them, and could that spirit get just dissolved completely in the next couple of days when they play a really good Nuggets team? Sure. But
Marcus Cousins in the Denver Nuggets, by the way.
Yeah, and Jokic in the Denver Nuggets. Michael Malone. Yeah,
Details.
Yeah, there's some good stuff there that's going to come up here in the next couple of days, and I want to see how this team responds, And I also, like, a name I'm going to keep mentioning is David Adelman. Like, keep your eye on David Adelman over there on that Nuggets bench. He's moved up. He's a lead assistant for Denver. And, number one, Michael Malone preaches defense, but also if I'm the Kings and I'm looking for our new head coach this summer, number one, the pedigree is there, the name is there, with it being Rick Adelman's son.
Oh, that's dangerous, don't you think?
No, I don't know, because he's been a coach for a long time. And then on top of that, I like the fact that he's been in a system that has a gigantic big man that is the center of the universe. And that's what the Kings are going into. They need to go into an era where they have a coach that understands how to utilize a big man. And to me, that's a good thing. So he's intriguing to me. I'm not saying he's the odds-on favorite. I'm saying, this is a lead assistant on a very, very good team, and he's got a shot to be a head coach, and he makes a lot of sense on a lot of different levels.
Hey, James, we were talking about this earlier at length. In your opinion, what would Alvin Gentry have to do to keep this job if he wanted it?
Man, in this situation where you're so far under 500, you're 16 games under 500 right now. I don't think the play-in can be the difference. I think it would have to be like a play-off spot, or everyone just falls in love with what's happening on the court. Like, the basketball is so good that you're like, oh wow, this is, not only did Sabonis unlock De'Aaron Fox, but Sabonis unlocked Alvin Gentry. I think that's where we could get to a point where it's just the continuity. You have to keep the continuity because they're playing so well and it makes so much sense. But we're a long ways away from that. And in 22 games, he's got a lot of ground to make up. And I don't know that he's on the chopping block for sure or anything else, but I do know that he's an interim. And they kept the interim tag. They didn't give him the full-time job. And I know he wanted a 3-year contract, and they said no. And I also know that Monty McNair, after swinging for the fences and landing Sabonis, has put himself in a situation where I believe he should be allowed to hire his own coach. And whoever that is, I don't know who it is, but that's what I would be looking at. He should be allowed to really figure out who it is that makes sense for him as a general manager that he thinks he can work with, and then go from there.
And that's got to be such a tough position for Alvin, because I got to imagine he knows he has to move mountains to be the head coach next year. And you're almost playing with the sense of, in Alvin Gentry's case, you're almost coaching with the sense of, I'm just focused in on these guys. I'm going to do my best with these guys, knowing that the day after the season's over, James Ham's probably going to tweet something about me not having a job anymore.
I'll tweet it one way or another.
Well, that's true.
I don't know which way it will go. Yeah. I'm not gonna say one way or another what I totally think is gonna happen, but I think he's in an uphill battle, and he knows that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that everyone around Sacramento knows that. So what you don't want to see is this saying the wheels completely fall off the bus like they did from game 15 to 45. We don't want to see that again. We're kind of done with seeing this thing completely fall apart where this team just shows no fire and no spirit. And then that would be like an instant, like, you're out of here. You can't be here anymore.
And I don't have an issue with him being a candidate either. Like if you're, I mean, unless Monty just knows, like, look, Alvin, this job isn't for you. I have no issue if it becomes Alvin. Like, look, you were made the interim head coach, but we've got to have some. We want to talk to Adelman. We want to talk to Vanderpool or Kenny Atkinson or whoever.
Atkinson, yeah.
So you're part of the process, but we've got to go through the process first, because we didn't go through the process with you. You were here, and we had to make you the coach. So we've got to take it a step further.
That, and they didn't go through the process last time either. When it came to Luke, they didn't go through the process, and like we've talked about that, but like Vlade went through the process before the Jaeger situation, and brought in like 8 coaches that were not named Dave Jaeger, and then all of a sudden Dave Jaeger became available on a Friday and was in Sacramento on a Saturday, and by Sunday morning had a new contract. That's how it went, like, really quickly. So like, look, I think,
and so just because we're here, can you elaborate on that like a little bit further, or at least what you're aware of? Did Dave Jaeger become available, I don't know, after he spoke to somebody who lives in the capital of California?
No, I think, first of all, Dave was one of the lowest paid coaches in the league at that point, and they had gone to Memphis and said, "Hey, like, we need a bump." And Memphis said no, and they said, "Okay, well then we'd like to leave." And so they worked a way to get Jaeger out, with the understanding that there might be a couple of coaching jobs that were available right then, one specifically that would probably take him on pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, when you look at head coaches, there's only a very small group of sorry, my train of thought, I just got a text from somebody. A very small group of
the Kings have traded for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, of agents. Yeah, there we go. Of agents that are coaching agents. So, there's not this big. There's a bunch of agents for players, but when it comes to coaches, there's probably only like 4 or 5 that really handle most of the coaches in the league, and they all have ties to each other. So, like Warren Legary is Dave Jaeger's agent, but also George Karl's agent, also Alvin Gentry's agent. Like, you can go down the list, and Spencer Breaker is a guy who's had he took over for the most part a business from another agent, and that agency had Paul Westphal and Keith Smart, and like whatever other coach the Kings have had was with, I think Wasserman is who Luke was under, but he's one of the rare ones that have sort of someone that's not typically in the coaching pool, and it was because he was a player.
Mm. Hey, James, so I was listening to the Kings Beat with you and Brennan Nunez. Good stuff. You mentioned something that you mentioned a few things that piqued my interest, but one specifically, talking about the guys that are going to be here moving forward, and Harrison Barnes. And you mentioned that maybe the Kings approach him for an extension this offseason, correct? You said this offseason? Yeah, and that was interesting because I feel like we've gone back and forth with Harrison a couple different times earlier in the season. Obviously, we all wanted to sign him to a long-term deal then. Then in the middle of the season, it's like, it looks like he's going to be on the trading block. But just like De'Aaron Fox seems to have been unlocked by Sabonis, it feels like Harrison Barnes might have been as well. And I think I'm back in the camp of, you want to have a guy like Harrison Barnes here. It does not, in my opinion, it does not hurt you to have Harrison Barnes as your 3rd, possibly 4th best player. Like, I think that's his destiny in this league. And if you can, show him that, hey, we're dedicated to winning, and lock him up this offseason, I would be all for that. How realistic do you think that is for Barnes' side and the Kings side?
I haven't talked to Barnes about it. He's under contract this coming season for $18 million. And for me, if Harrison's a guy who's comfortable with where he's at, I know like his wife's family is from the Bay Area. so they want to be nearby. There could come a point where Harrison is a guy that goes around and chases rings and does stuff like that, because he is a very, very high level, competent player that's going to have no problem finding jobs in the NBA. But when it comes to like the Kings, he means so much to them, just not just on the court, but off the court, in the locker room, all of these things. And if you reset the roster in a way that he still makes sense, then, I think either you're going to do one of two things. Either you're going to shop him really, really hard on draft day and leading up to free agency, and you're going to try to massively improve that position, or you're going to go a completely different route, and you should at least consider locking him up, because I think he's a player that is going to make life easier for Sabonis and Fox. And the fact that he can play the 3, the fact that he can play the 4, he can start at either position without any problem. It's like all of the things that Harrison Barnes does, he's a really good player. And I think he's underappreciated in Sacramento because there are times where, does he disappear? Sure. Does he have a couple of games a year where it's just like, oh man, what happened? Every player has those games. Every player. So I'm not going to call Harrison Barnes out for having bad games, because for the most part, for about 65 to 70 games a year, he's really, really good. And the Kings don't have another player really that's like him, that's a veteran, that's 29 going on 30, who takes care of his body in the way that he does, that shows other players how to take care of their body. And if you're looking at a deal that takes him 30, 31, he's already under contract for next year when he's 30, but really 31, 32, 33, you're still getting high-level Harrison Barnes that entire time, just because he does take care of himself. So while there's a lot of mileage on that guy, not making the playoffs for the last 5 years actually is probably saved a lot of his body for him playing longer, for him extending this thing out and not having major injuries. He's a guy who absolutely does all of the little things off the court, on the court, in the locker room, that you really would like to see him stick around if you can. I think he can be a building block still. And the last thing, if you lose Harrison Barnes and you replace him with a player that's kind of like him, but maybe is a little younger, well, you still need another one of those guys.
Right.
This team is not one player away, unless that player is so incredibly good. And then there's still probably 3 really solid players away from being a high level playoff team. So yeah, I would try to lock him up for a 3-year 48. So again, he's 18. So go 17, 16, 15 and have his salary go down. Maybe that's a little high, but at the same time, I mean, the dude plays 35 minutes a night and gives you plus 15 PER. He's a 15, 16, 17 PER guy, hits a 3, gets to the rim, plays defense, does everything you need him to do.
Yeah. Vivek out here, light years, playing chess over your head. Let's think now to preserve Harrison for the next contract.
There it is.
Light years over your head.
Yeah, he's out here playing chess.
3-dimensional.
Indeed. This is basketball 2.0 right here. Davion, perhaps we're at 3.0 by this point. Davion Mitchell returned practiced last night and today. How did he look? And I guess how's he feeling?
He didn't talk to the media, but he was on the near court right next to us. He looks fine. And I'm not sure how he injured his hand, but I kind of got from talking to people around the Kings, that he, when he took one of the charges or one of the calls that weren't called a charge, but it should have been a charge, he fell back on his hand, back behind him, almost like a snowboard injury. And he just, had some sort of bruise on his hand that made it really uncomfortable to catch the ball and dribble and do all the things you need to do as a guard. I think he's going to be totally fine to play on Thursday. I don't think we're going to see him miss many more games. He's a tough guy, and I think he's a guy that we're kind of watching to see where he can build in the last half of this season, the last quarter of this season.
And that's, yeah, how does he get factored into all of this? Kenny and I were trying to figure out kind of that 2-guard spot moving forward, and it's it's almost a blessing. Like, we'd love to see Terrence Davis here, but like, I don't know what to do with Davion Mitchell right now and Dante DiVincenzo. But you throw Terrence Davis into that mix, it starts to get like, what's happening there at that position, and what's happening with Davion, who has that Tyrese Halliburton sample size where he's really showing out with De'Aaron Fox out of the lineup, and now, oh, hey kid, got a different role here for you for the final 22.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see is Davion play like close to 28 minutes tonight, and I think we're going to see Dante DiVincenzo play 28 plus, and we're going to see Fox play a ton, probably 35, 36 minutes tonight. And you're going to start having to do math here and dividing and subtracting, and but
we don't do math here on this show.
Yeah, I get you. I think that's going to kind of be like, if you throw Terrence Davis in, that's kind of going to be your 4-guard set for next season, I believe. I mean, it's possible, I know Justin Holiday's around at like $6.5 million for next season, but like, if you can't see how Terrence Davis would just do damage with Sabonis, you're crazy. The way that he like attacks the rim, but if he can attack the rim as a back cutter and his ability to shoot the three, I think he will absolutely be dangerous in this offense. And the same thing, like DiVincenzo, like I want to see more and more and more DiVincenzo. I want to see DiVincenzo as a starter. I think you can mix Davion in for some games as a starter, but I really want to see if Fox and DiVincenzo can be a starting backcourt. I think it's good that DiVincenzo, Mitchell, and Fox can all handle primary ball handling duties. They can all be the point. And that's one thing that I've seen from DiVincenzo. He can play the point. I want to see them go back and do a bunch of 3-guard sets, because 3-guard sets with a passing big man looks a lot different than 3-guard sets with like your classic rim runner like Rashawn Holmes. So I want to see DiVincenzo with the other two. I want to see Justin Holiday with those guys as well. I want to see like some, even some Jeremy Lamb, like mix these things up, because even I think Jeremy Lamb, if you use him the right way, you can kind of look at him as the placeholder for Terrence Davis. And like, this is the stuff that we could use Terrence Davis for next season. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't mind like the guards that they have right now. I think that they do have some skill. They've got like really different styles of guards, which I know they did early in the season too, but it was kind of a mess.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Dante DiVincenzo, much like you, that's somebody that I want to see get a lot of opportunity during the season. And like you mentioned, start next to Fox, because I think he possibly could be your starting 2-guard moving forward. One of the things with DiVincenzo, and we talked about this earlier, is I don't want to say he has to be back, but barring some just an epic failure of 20-something games and making sure the price is right, Monty probably got him thinking he's going to at least bring him back for another deal. Don't you think?
DiVincenzo?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've been chasing DiVincenzo for a couple of years. They really like him, and they think that he can be a really, really good top like 6, 7 of the rotation guy, whether he's a starter or whether he's coming off the bench. I don't think we know quite yet. But, I mean, this is a guy who started on a team that went on to win the championship. So, he had the injury, but, I mean, he would have been a starter like going down the stretch. And, he's a guy with a ring. He's a guy who's played on really good teams. He's a guy who's played next to an MVP caliber player and understands how to play off that player. And, again, those are valuable pieces that if you're not really inundated with basketball, you don't understand that players who understand their role and play to their strengths, those are really, really valuable players, especially if you can get a 24, 25-year-old who all of a sudden gets it, that they're not going to be the next, whatever you think you can be as a player, that they
Kobe Bryant comes to mind.
Yeah.
Not that there was ever a player on this team who thought he was Kobe Bryant, but never mind. Go ahead.
No, but you're right. Like the fact that Buddy Hield still like
I didn't say that.
I'm just saying, like the fact that 6 years in, 7 years in, he still thought that that's who he could be, and that someone else was holding him back. That's that's a classic bad team mentality. It is. I mean, I've watched it. We've talked about this a bunch of times. Like, how many times did Jason Thompson say, "Man, I can't wait till I get 12 shots a game"? It's like, bro, you ain't getting 12 shots a game in Turkey.
Ain't happening.
Or, you might get 12 shots a game in China, but but that's a problem that you, especially when you're a team that doesn't have a superstar or star level player, the other guys never quite figure out what their role is. And that leads to problems. It leads to guys doing too much. It leads to guys doing too little. It leads to guys who have overinflated sense of worth. It leads to you overpaying somebody that doesn't deserve the money that they get. It really does. Like, that's how bad franchises stay bad, unfortunately. And it's really, really hard to break that cycle.
You mentioned this on the Kings Beat podcast. This is the most important offseason the Kings have had in a really, really long time.
Oh, yeah.
And it all centers around Domantas Sabonis. That's not a question. That was just a statement.
Yeah. No, yes, it does. No,
James,
I mean,
talk about the importance of Domantas Sabonis to the Sacramento Kings.
Like, the next season means everything. So, like, if you don't get that, like, Monty McNair, like, I guarantee you understands the importance of this offseason.
He ain't sitting on his hands this offseason.
No, because if you don't have a really good season next year, and if you're not building towards something, then you got one season left as Sabonis, and you're figuring out where you're going to trade him. Because if you cannot get him to sign a massive extension in the summer of 2023, then you're in trouble. You lost a really, really good young player for 1 or 2 year rental of Sabonis. So, like, this offseason, very specifically, and I see players saying draft Jabari Smith and all this stuff. Man, if you're in the top 4, maybe if you're number 1, then you're going to look at the draft differently. But if you're in the top 6, like, that's a really, really good trade asset.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to think of it that way, because that might be able to get you a player that's close to Sabonis level, or a player that's above where you're looking at a guy like, Harrison. Like, you're going to get a better player than Harrison with the number 4 pick, if you put that out there to shop. And I still think you have Rashawn Holmes that you can go and shop for something else. Like, you got to fill out this roster with not just pieces, the right pieces, and much better players than what you have right now. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing. We're going to start seeing this team, like what we talked about, the Chicago Bulls, where they went out and got who did they get? Vucevic.
Big boots.
Yeah. So if you go get Vucevic, now it's like, oh, that was step 1. Now let me do step 2, step 3 in this coming off season. Let's build for something. Even if you just get step 1 done during this off season, but then you're ready to make another move during the season, I think that's that's how you build a winner, and you build a sustainable winner. And the key is that if you build a sustainable winner now, it's very possible that you get to keep Domantas Sabonis for all the way through his prime and lock him up on a 5-year deal that gets him another 6 years in Sacramento. And, he even talked about it last night that, he has a house in LA, and he's like, it's an hour flight. He's like, I'm here in like no time at all. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who makes $18 million a year, $19 million. Like, he's going to make a lot more money than that on his next contract. Like, that's not going to be hard for him to have a jet service waiting for him to fly him back and forth when he wants to go home. And, so I really do think that we all need to consider that, like, he does want to be in California. What you have to do is you have to make an environment where he wants to stay, and he doesn't just want to go down and play for the Clippers or the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make that, like, you got to do the right things for him right now and build the team around him.
And James, that's why I thought, when the question came up, I understood why it would come up, but tanking is just completely out of the question at this point. Like, if you end up losing games just because you're not good enough, that's one thing. But there's no way you're tanking, because the second the call went through to the league to bring Sabonis here from Tyrese Haliburton, the clock started on the recruiting of Domantas Sabonis for his next contract. And everything that you do has to be to prove to him, you can stay here, we can be successful, and this is where you should be long term. And that includes these final 20 some odd games, as long as this offseason and next season as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, you shouldn't, like, no franchise should go 15 years and potentially 16, most likely 16 years without a playoff spot, without going to the playoffs. Like, everything leading up to this moment is just do right. Just choose the right path. You chose a path right now. Now, if you can't see how to build this thing out, then you shouldn't be doing the job. Like, everyone should be able to see the path. Like, you need 3-and-D stretch guys. You need, again, so many shooters. You can build this thing right now. And do you have to spend, like, your first-round pick? Maybe not. But you certainly can't just do budget moves here. This has to be, like, the start of something big. And hopefully that's where we're at. Hopefully we're looking at something that, that makes sense, that they can start putting it together on the fly as we build up to the draft and free agency and all that.
And that's like great look ahead for next year. Like, looking at this squad right now, like, this team still this roster still very much has flaws to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, they don't have enough shooting. I mean, that's like, if DiVincenzo is a 38% shooter, then you're looking at a different team. If again, like, Justin Holiday is hitting his shots like what he did the other night, where he went 6 of 11. That's you're okay there, right? And you add Davion Mitchell in, and all of a sudden you do have at least 4 or 5 shooters. Terrence Davis gives you another shooter, but, like, you need a stretch 4 that can really space the floor and open things up, and really, like, create all kinds of like, both passing lanes and running lanes for Fox and Sabonis. There's very specific things you need here. And again, you could even follow the mode that we've seen, the model that you're going to see from Denver. Unfortunately for Denver, they're missing 2 of their major pieces, and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter. But, like, it doesn't always have to be the big, gigantic players that you're looking at. It can be something as simple as finding the next Zeke Naji. Like, it's something like that, where he's a guy that goes later in the draft, but one of the only stretch 4s in his draft, and a guy that can block shots and can rebound a little bit, but can really space the floor and hit a 3. The Kings need that player. They need multiple of that player. And so I really do think that they can build something special here, but they got to do it right. They can't miss. And I think we all feel that, right?
I'm going to hit you with a Kenny Caraway line. You know what we're missing? We're missing Rashawn Holmes. That's what we're missing.
Cam Reddish.
We're missing Rashawn Holmes. Yeah,
Cam
oh my
Reddish.
gosh.
Gotta give me some Cam Reddish.
The day Cam Reddish is the Sacramento King will be the greatest day of Kenny Caraway.
Oh, he's coming on the show. I'm talking.
Oh my God.
I'm being
we're live from the airport. It's Kenny Caraway live from the airport. First interview with Cam Reddish.
Well, thanks for dealing with me. I have allergies, and I did not take my allergy meds this morning, and I'm just just draining.
Oh no, I heard it. I was like, Ham is fighting something. I didn't know if he had a cold or what it was, but
it's just allergies. Everything's in bloom up here, even though it's like 30 degrees and snowing.
Dude, I've never seen a warning before that said it says hard freezing warning. The hell does that mean?
That means that all of your plants will die. If you leave any of your plants out, all of your plants will die. So, I don't have my garden going right now, but it would have killed everything. Like, I woke up this morning, it was 26 degrees up here. I'm like, when has it ever been 26? I drove through Auburn yesterday, and the Ridge golf course was covered in snow, like in the afternoon. I'm like, where in the world? And it didn't snow at my house, but it snowed at a lower elevation. I'm like, what in the world? Where did this snow come from? Just crazy. Yeah, cover your plants.
Stay warm, people. Stay